Jenkins. This is September 27th, 2017, and I'm interviewing Dr. David Kleinbaum,
who just retired from being at Emory University School of Public Health, Department of Epidemiology for the past 25 years, prior to have been at UNC for the previous 24 years.
Whoa!
So, had a long history. That's why it's time to retire.
I didn't realize that many years. Okay, all right. So what I like to do is to start from the beginning of the beginning. So you were born in and originally from...
Okay. Born in Brooklyn in 1941, before Pearl Harbor. Born in February.
Right.
There are some other well-known people that were born in Brooklyn that I have some way of, I should mention. One is Woody Allen, of course, who he and I have a lot in common. Carole King.
Oh, yeah.
Went to high school with me.
Oh, wow.
Class, she was Carol Klein. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was not in my class. She's about 15 years older, but she also went to Madison. Chuck Schumer, who's the head of the minority head, he went to Madison. So there were a lot of Madisonians.
You grew up on Avenue L, didn't you?
No, I grew up on, it was like East 24th between N and O, Avenue N and Avenue O. And it was a short block and a half to the elementary school, which was 197. So it was easy to get to. And it was another 2.5 more blocks to the high school, James Madison High School, which where I went to high school.
So you didn't go to, there was no junior high school in those days?
They had started junior high school, but the only thing they had started about those days was the so-called advanced rapid, I can't remember what it was called.
SP?
SP. And that was only, you had to take a test. And if you didn't do what they hit their cut point, then you didn't get invited. And I didn't hit their cut point. So, which I don't know whether, and a lot of my friends who I played with in the streets and stuff like that, the neighbors, they did.
Yeah.
So it hurt a little bit, but somehow I think I've gotten over it. Yeah.
Okay, so in high school...
High school was very large high school.
Yeah.
6,000 students in the high school.
Wow.
1,200 in my graduating class.
Whoa.
I was academically, my grade point average, I was 11th out of the 1,100, my grade point average. There are a lot of really, really bright people. I was really intimidated by that group because the math team, they were bright. They were bright. I didn't want to even consider joining the math team because they were really smart people. So I sort of had a low. I spent most of my time, other than taking classes, doing music. I played in the band, orchestra, and dance band.
Interesting. Yeah. And substantial part, when I was in private Catholic school, there were 18 students in my class. And then I transferred to a big public school. There were 28 students in my class.
We had to have graduation in Lowe's Kings, big movie theater. Because
wow.
Class in our auditorium.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
And then I think the year after that, they had to have 2 separate graduations because the class was too big.
Wow.
But now it turns out Madison's smaller because in my neighborhood, a lot of Orthodox Jewish high schools, I don't know what the yeshivas, were started. And a lot of the kids there are going to those yeshivas and they're not going to Madison. So Madison's size now is not 6,000, it's about 3,500. And it's not 98% Jewish like it was when I was. It's probably now about maybe 35% Jewish.
Wow.
Something like that.
I went to Midwood, which
was
about 5,000 or something like that, and it had about 1,000 people in the graduating class, and it was like 98% Jewish and very similar.
Yeah, when there was like a Jewish holiday, when I was there. I mean, they had to make special arrangements for the non-Jews.
Mm.
There was only, 100 of them,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
They didn't just call off class because they had to go to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what they did.
But there were no classes. So they-
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they did. They had figured something out, but it was a good school. I mean, a lot of bright people. Another sort of famous, sort of semi-famous graduate student who's fairly well known at the New York Times is Jane Brody.
Hmm.
She writes
The science writer, isn't she?
Science writer for the.
Wow.
So, and we had a 50th reunion about maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And a lot of people came. I mean, she was there, other people were there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
about, out of the 1,200, I think about 250 people came.
Mm.
I don't know whether that's good or bad, because that's still a small percentage, but it was still a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Carol King didn't come. She sent we had a catalog or something that described the people who graduated, and they wrote something, and she wrote, or according to my wife, Edna, whoever does her editing or something, did that for her or something like that. But it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, I did not like Catholic school, but I had a great time in public school, and we just had our 50th. Because I spent my last 2 years in public school. Once I got accepted to college, my mother let me go to public school, which was really cool. And I'm just beginning to appreciate that experience now. So, in my experience, I had a teacher who encouraged me in mathematics, and that's how I ended up. That and the fact that my mother told me to go to law school, that's how I ended up in mathematics. So, when you finished high school, you wasn't sure about math, but when you got to college.
Well, I really wasn't sure about math. I mean, it was good. I got good grades. My grades were high.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of really brilliant people.
Yeah, that's true.
So I didn't feel like I was going to be a math genius. Because
Yeah.
there were people that were, So when I went to Hamilton, I wasn't sure what I was going to major in. I wound up majoring in math.
Mm.
But there was, in my class, Hamilton's a small school. There was 600 in the school, the whole school.
Mm.
And there was like 110 in my class.
Mm.
And there were only 6 math majors.
Mm.
And of the 6, I was the 4th best.
Mm.
And the other guys were good.
Mhm.
The guys that were, sort of below me were also good. So I didn't, have this strong feeling that I was going to be this math whiz that was going to have a whole career doing math. But when I graduated, I had to figure out, well, what was I going to do next? And so I decided to apply to graduate school, and I wasn't sure which kind of graduate school. So I applied to law school, I applied to business school, I applied to the University of Rochester and a couple of other schools for a master's in math. And I got into Harvard Business School, but because I had no business experience, they said, you can come the next year, but not this year, because we wanted you to get a year, under your belt somehow. And I eventually decided to go to get a master's in mathematics at the University of Rochester, which is what I did. And when I was there, now it turns out, I don't know if you want to hear all this, but when I was there, the master's degree program in mathematics, this was theoretical mathematics.
Right.
Where the whole time you were in that program, 2 years to get your master's degree, and I guess 4 years for PhD, but 2 years, I never saw a number.
Mm.
It was all extremely abstract, and the courses I took, the one that was most difficult was algebraic topology. Never saw a number. Very theoretical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, I sort of knew I wasn't cut out to be to get a PhD in theoretical mathematics. By the time I left, I mean, even my advisor sort of said, my grades were okay, but I wouldn't, as good as some of the others. So what was I going to do? And at that point, I decided I didn't really want to go to business school. that wasn't me or something. So I took a job. Well, I had I got my master's in a year and a half. January of '64 is when I finished it. And an opportunity arose where there was a fellow who was a faculty member at Hobart and William Smith Colleges who wanted to finish he was a faculty member at Hope there, and he wanted to finish his PhD dissertation, and he wanted to take off for 6 months to do it. So I met him, and he said, would you be willing to come here for 6 months and, take over my load? And so I said, yeah. So I moved to Geneva, New York. And for 6 months, that's when I had my first real teaching experience.
Mm.
And I was teaching courses, differential equations, calculus, I'm not sure what else. And it was my first time teaching, so I was just a step ahead of myself, barely.
Mm.
First time you teach, it's really hard getting it together, especially if you don't even know this topic. I haven't taught the stuff. So it was quite an experience, and I enjoyed it. It was I enjoyed doing it and working through it, and enjoyed the whole experience of it. And that was when I said, okay, what am I going to do next? It was just a 6-month thing. So I said, I don't know if I'm really still ready to do a PhD, because I'm not sure what it would be in. It wasn't going to be in theoretical mathematics. I wasn't sure what it was going to be in. So I applied to get a job. And there was a position, a number of places, but there was a position at it was called the Cornell Institute. I can't remember it had the word Cornell because it had an association called Cornell University, but it was a research, private research thing that got grant money.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a job there. I worked there for 2 years in Buffalo. So I was in Hamilton, upstate New York, near Utica. I was in Rochester, and then I went to Buffalo. A long time, cold upstate New York.
Cold places.
And those 2 years were very interesting to me because it turned out that I found that most of the work that I was involved in or getting involved in all involved doing analysis that would involve statistical work. And I had one course in statistics at Rochester by a very bad teacher. And I didn't, I didn't think I wanted to go back in theoretical statistics, but I wanted to do something. And so I decided that I was going to go back to graduate school, but it was going to be in more applied statistics. So I applied to a bunch of different statistics programs, and one was at UNC. And UNC was one of the most famous ones, because that was one of the first ones that started the statistical, a lot of the very, very famous mathematical, theoretical statisticians were there. R.C. Bose, C.R. Rao, 2 Indian fellows, and Vasily Höfting, a lot of pretty famous people on the faculty. And I got in there, and I got into some other places, but and I also got some kind of a fellowship or scholarship to help pay for tuition. So, and then I also had this experience because when I grew up in North Carolina.
Wait, where you grew up in?
When I grew up in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Sorry.
When I grew up in Brooklyn. During the years I was in high school, North Carolina University had a great basketball team, and all the players were from Brooklyn. And my junior year at high school, I listened to the championship game, national championship game between North Carolina and Kansas. Kansas had Will Chamberlain. They don't lose. They're supposed to not lose.
Right.
North Carolina won in triple overtime.
Yeah.
And they were undefeated. And the starting 5 were all from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And the coach was from Brooklyn. And the player on the team that was voted player of the year was Lenny Rosenbluth, a Jewish guy from New York.
Mm.
So I knew that being from Brooklyn, North Carolina was a place that I could go to. So when I got into North Carolina there, I said, I'm going there. Because that's a place where people go.
Right.
People are,
Yeah.
And for years they kept recruiting Brooklyn
guys.
So that was a major reason for my going. So I started out in the math stat department, and one of my colleagues, there are a lot of turned out to be very good statisticians that were even in my class. One of my classmates was Larry Cooper. We started at the same time.
Right.
With some other people, Peter Emory, Ron Forthover. I don't know if you know any of these guys.
Yeah.
I know Peter.
Peter Nemini, yeah.
Well, Peter Nemini and Peter Emory.
Oh.
Peter Nemini was not he was not a student at UNC, but he worked there. He did there to recruit minority students.
Okay.
And I got to know him very well, and I worked with him on going to trips and stuff like that. So, but Peter Emory was a graduate student, and of the 16 graduate students in my class in that year that I started, Larry being one of them, only 4 of us actually finished with a degree.
Wow.
And the others were bright. This was, again, I didn't realize that theoretical mathematics was what I had learned when I was in Rochester, but this was theoretical statistics. Again, you didn't see a number. And it was pretty distressing, and the people who didn't pass were all really bright, but they made the exam really tough theoretically, and I was fortunate. I didn't even pass the first time. I had to take it a second time to pass it. And I did, and then there were 4 of us who eventually got our degrees. It took me a year longer to do it. It took me 4 years to do it. So during those 4 years, I knew this was not the field I really wanted to be doing. I was in theoretical mathematics, getting a PhD in it, but that was not me. I wanted to do what I originally wanted to do. I wanted to do something with numbers and real life things. So there was a school of public health on the campus, and it was in a different building, if you remember. And they had a department of biostatistics, department of epidemiology, and other departments. And there was an opening in the department of biostatistics for 2 faculty to work with the department of epidemiology on a grant on the analysis of a long-time grant that they had called the Evans County Study.
Oh, yeah.
You're familiar with.
So what year was this? What calendar
This was
year?
1970 was when I got my PhD. That's when I'm looking for a job.
So, okay. So you didn't work with the epi department before then?
Well, I didn't accept that in the second year of my PhD program. I got a fellowship in the biostatistics department, it wasn't the epi department, because there was a visitor from Australia that was looking for somebody to work with him, and it was more analytical. It was not as theoretical. It was some theoretical, but it was more analytical, and so I took this fellowship that paid most of everything, and I was working with him on that fellowship.
Was this a biostatistician? This person from England?
Well, he was from Australia.
Was it Robert Beaglehall?
No, it wasn't Robert Beaglehall.
Anthony McMichael?
No, it wasn't either of them. It was.
But was he one of the people who had an epi appointment?
No,
no.
He had an appointment in the biostatistics.
I see. Okay.
department.
Okay.
So I got this fellowship to work with him on the things he was working on, and he was a lovely guy, and we got along together. And in fact, my dissertation topic was really developed through working with him. And my committee didn't know as much about it as he did, and it was about multivariate modeling when you had several dependent variables, not just independent variables, but dependent variables. And there's all these Hotelling's T-square stuff. I don't know if you remember any of that, general ways of doing statistical tests when you had several dependent variables. And that's what he was doing with some real data. So I got those last 2 years I was working with him while I was working on my dissertation. He wasn't on my committee because the committee in the statistics department, they were arrogant and they didn't want anybody but the people in the statistics department to be on their committee. And so I'm working with this guy who's really helping me out. And then it turns out my chair of my department was Jim Grizzle. He wasn't actually at that time the chair of the department. He was a faculty member, but he was the chair of my committee. He was joint chair with Norman Johnson, who was a long-time theoretical statistics faculty member. So I had these two co-chairs.
And Jim Grisel had an appointment in statistics?
No,
Or-
he was in bio.
He was in bio.
But he must have had a something in statistics. So they were my co-chair. Okay. Turns out in my last year, when I'm finishing up the dissertation, Jim Grisel goes off on a sabbatical to somewhere in, I don't know where it was, Netherlands or someplace. And he wasn't even there. And a lot of what this thing was about came from an idea that he got, but he never worked on it with me. It was this guy from Australia that the name will come up with. So eventually I, finished it off and did what I thought was, a good dissertation. And it took me a while to figure it out. Also one day I had this, inspiration or something. I said, I think this will do it. And it did. And so I wrote the dissertation up. I had to send it to my committee. Jim Grisel, I sent it to Jim Grisel. He said, I don't want to read it. Because even though it was my idea, I'm on sabbatical now, and I want it to stand on its own, even though it was my idea in the first place. So here was the guy who gave me the idea, doesn't even want to support it. He wasn't not supporting it. He just didn't want to be bothered with it. Okay. So I had to replace him with somebody, and the guy I replaced him with was P.K. Sen, who was a very theoretical guy, too. But a nice guy.
Yeah.
It's not like Grisel was sort of nasty. Well, I mean, I know it's on it. Grisel wasn't a very fun thing, the way that happened. And so I turned in the dissertation, and the committee had it. And they had it for I turned it in September. In 1969, and I didn't have my my final dissertation or whatever you want to call it until February, March. And the reason was they didn't read it, and particularly there was one guy, and this Grisel didn't read it because he already said he didn't want to read it. One guy named Indira Chakravarti, who I don't know if you know his name. He didn't read it.